Hello, and you are listening to Eco Justice Radio. We present environmental and climate stories from a social justice frame, featuring voices not necessarily heard on mainstream media. Eco Justice Radio acknowledges we recorded this show on the traditional territory of the Tongva people and all of their relatives in the place we call Los Angeles. Welcome, I am Jack Ite. On today's show, Psychedelic Frontiers, Paul Stamets and the Healing Power of Mushrooms. We feature multiple presentations given by visionary mycology researcher and author Paul Stamets. Paul Stamets is an award-winning mycologist, entrepreneur, and industry leader in fungi production, habitat, and medicinal use. He's an author of 7 books, the latest coming out in June, and advocates on medicinal fungi and mycoremediation for ecological restoration and detoxification of the environment. Stamets played a significant part in the 2019 documentary film Fantastic Fungi and edited its official companion book, Fantastic Fungi, Expanding Consciousness, Alternative Healing, and Environmental Impact. Paul Stamets is a leading mycologist and advocate for the medicinal use of fungi, and psychedelics have become a sort of big thing. Although illegal as a Schedule I drug in much of the United States and beyond, 2 states have approved use of psilocybin mushrooms in therapeutic settings, and many more states and countries are reviewing their policies. Schedule I drugs are defined as being with a high potential for abuse, or drugs with no recognized medical uses. However, psilocybin mushrooms have had numerous medical and religious uses in dozens of cultures throughout history, and let's face it, mushrooms are not addictive. Nobody's taken them again and again. Or, well, I can't say about that. But Paul Stamets is one of the leading advocates worldwide for opening up the possibility of legalization. Paul introduces listeners to several key mushroom species, and beyond psychedelics, they have important medical and therapeutic uses in treatment of diseases. He emphasizes the importance of integrating indigenous knowledge with modern science, revealing how traditional practices can inform and enhance our approach to health and wellness. Focus on the potential of psilocybin mushrooms to address mental health challenges and promote community healing. So Paul Stamets inspires hope for a future where these little fungi play a crucial role in both personal and planetary health. We begin with a trailer from the documentary film, as we mentioned, Fantastic Fungi. That's a 2019 film. Many different luminaries are in it.
My mission is to discover the language of nature, and I believe nature is intelligent.
There is a world under the earth, full of magic and mystery. It holds the consciousness of nature's connection to all living things.
You know, these mushrooms, they can heal you, they can feed you, they can kill you.
It's not like a vegetable, and it's not like an animal, but it's somewhere in between.
They support life, they convert life.
As you're walking, there's about 300 miles of fungi under every footstep that you take, and that's all over the world.
The bulk of the organism is growing underground, and it's composed of these long threads called a mycelium.
Almost everyone knows about the computer internet. The mycelium shares the same network design.
It's amazing what we don't know about mushrooms. They really are a frontier of knowledge.
You can filter water. You can create medicinal compounds almost on demand.
They have incredible capacity to make things change very quickly. So I am super hopeful.
The psychedelic members of the mushroom kingdom are fascinating.
I have been a guide for around 350 psilocybin sessions.
The most glorious part was that it made me feel more comfortable with living because you're not afraid of dying.
We need to have a paradigm shift in our consciousness. What will it take to achieve that?
We can heal the planet. We can build the future. in our world is fantastic.
Next, we share a 2011 TED-Med talk given by Paul Stamets.
We are now rediscovering that which our ancestors long ago knew, that mushrooms are deep reservoirs for very powerful medicines. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to describe 4 mushrooms which I think are essential for human health. The first mushroom I want to mention is amadou. Amadou was described by Hippocrates in 450 BC as an anti-inflammatory. Well, amadou is a birch polypore, but it has other attributes as well. You can hollow this mushroom out in the center, put embers of a fire inside, and keep fire alive for days. Moreover, if you boil this mushroom, it delaminates into a cellular fabric. And my hat is made from amadou. Now, another fungal friend I have here, which I want to unveil, is agarikon. Agarikon is the longest living mushroom in the world. It was described by Dioscorides in 65 AD as Elixirium ad longum vitam, the treatment against consumption. Now, this mushroom is a resident of the old-growth forest. It is now thought to be extinct in Europe. It grows in Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. This mushroom survives in the old-growth forest under extremely adverse conditions, hundreds of inches of rain per year, wind, sleet, hail, baking in the sun, and yet is the longest living mushroom that we know today. So my partner and wife spent a lot of time in the old-growth forest looking for these mushrooms. And to give you some idea how rare agarikon is, although we have 40 strains of agarikon in culture after 30 years, the largest library by far in the world, my dear professor, Dr. Michael Bugh, discovered his first agarikon in the old-growth forest just these past few weeks after looking for mushrooms in the old-growth forest for more than 40 years. So agarikon has anti-tubercular properties, and we have now confirmed this, working with the U.S. BioShield Biodefense Program under the guidance of NIH and U.S. AMRID. And sometimes we have to go to great extremes to find these mushrooms. This is a 700-year-old Douglas fir tree. Our team member ascends the tree. We go 100 feet up this tree, and this is the oldest agarikon that we have found so far, approaching 100 years in age. Now, how is it that this mushroom can survive under microbial attack? And it's able to do so because the mycelium is this cellular architecture that is based on a network concept. And we don't need to harvest the mushrooms. We get a small piece of tissue. And the mycelium, as it grows, utilizes what we know as epigenesis. It has the amazing ability to adapt its host defense strategies against pathogens. And using this information, we've been able to develop some very powerful gateways to new medicines. And these are extracellular droplets that we wash from the mycelium. And I'm happy to announce that we have discovered a new class of antimicrobials and antivirals called fomitopsterols, after the Latin name of this mushroom, which is Fomitopsis officinalis. So powerful are these antivirals that when we do 100-to-1 dilution, we are more powerful than ribavirin against flu viruses and herpes. Now, mushrooms have other properties which are interesting. And so this is a group of cordyceps mushrooms. They're known as entomopathogenic fungi, fungi that kill insects. And the insects are on a constant dire dance between dinner and death as they go through soils. And cordyceps is a source of cyclosporin. Moreover, just recently, the FDA approved Novartis for a new anti-MS drug called Gilenya, which is predicted to be one of the 10 most profitable commercially produced drugs in the history of medicine. But cordyceps has a different face. And the cordyceps is a mold, has a mold stage. And they're like two faces of the same organism. These spores are very infectious to these insects, and most insects have entomopathogenic fungi that can harm them, so they avoid them with great diligence. But I did something different. I took these cultures of the mold state and I morphed it in the laboratory into a pre-sporulating form. And so insects avoid these spores, but I discovered that if you took the mycelium without the spores, something else happened, which was truly amazing. They became super attractants. And they became super attractants to ants, to termites, and a surprising array of other types of insects. And so the insects, in this case an ant, becomes mummified, And then, boing, a cordyceps mushroom sprouts out of its head. So it goes full circle. Now, we did extracts, again, washing the mycelium, and we were able to find that termites would stream directly to the location where the extracts were placed, and 3 positive controls, and the termites would tunnel specifically to where that location was. Well, I started trying against other non-social insects, flies, gnats, and mosquitoes. And this is the baseline. The flat graph there is the control. And the only difference is we added the mycelium to the extract. And we have not just attractants, but I've discovered super attractants. So when I tried it against mosquitoes, and this is where we hit the big home run, we can attract mosquitoes roughly equivalent to a human hand with the extracts. This has profound implications for disease control, from malaria to yellow fever to West Nile virus. And so what can we do? There's lots that we can do. I think we can now control disease vectors, zoonotic diseases carried by insects across landscapes. And since so many insects and arthropods vector diseases, most of you may not know that H5N1 bird flu is carried by houseflies. This is something that's not widely reported. But because of climate change, subtropical diseases are now entering into temperate zones. So being able to control zoonotic pathogens, I think, is one avenue that will have a positive impact in helping habitats and humans dwelling within those habitats. Moreover, insects and arthropods not only transmit diseases that afflict humans, but plants. So the implications of this, I think, is absolutely enormous. So we can increase the efficiency of bug zappers. We can steer insect migrations across landscapes. This is a paradigm-shifting, revolutionary breakthrough on the most fundamental of levels. And moreover, we can attract disease-carrying bugs and blend them with expired antiviral drugs, antimicrobial drugs, or the crude precursors that made those drugs. And we can create a panoply of a mixture of these drugs so the disease resistance would not occur. We can distract the insects away from human populations, away from animal populations, away from plant populations, or we can bring them to a locus and be able to control them. And most of you have heard that the mosquito population on the East Coast was 10 times greater this year than it was previously. So another mushroom empowers the immune system, and this is turkey tails. And turkey tail mushrooms have also been used for more than 1,000 years. NIH funded our group with a $2.1 million breast cancer clinical study, which has been recently completed. Now, this breast cancer clinical study was dealing with a non-ER, non-estrogen responsive breast cancer patients, ladies. And the study has come back with some remarkable results. And when patients have radiation therapy or chemotherapy, their immune system is oftentimes impaired, so natural killer cells are decreased. Taking these mushrooms as an adjunct therapy, not as a substitution, but to support the immune system, the natural killer cells increase on a dose-dependent basis. The red bar is no treatment with 3 grams and 6 grams per day. And then post-radiation, the immune system is depressed, and then on a dose-dependent basis, the natural killer cells are enhanced over a period of 4 weeks. So this raises base immunity function, which I think is critically important. Now, this hit home to me very personally in June of 2009, when my 84-year-old mother called me up and said, "Paul, I have something very serious to talk to you about, but you're always so busy." It's a terrible thing to hear from Mom. I said, "Mom, what's wrong?" And she's a very happy, genuine person. She goes, "I'm worried." And my mother's deeply religious, has not seen a doctor since 1968. She said, "My right breast is 5 times the size of my left. I have 6 swollen lymph glands the size of walnuts." And her voice started shaking, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I started crying. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" We spent a large part of June at the Swedish Breast Cancer Clinic in Seattle. The oncologist examined her, and upon the second examination, she had a 5.5 centimeter diameter tumor. It metastasized, it went to her sternum, it went to her liver. She had stage 4 breast cancer. The doctor gave her less than 3 months to live and stated it was the second worst case of breast cancer she has seen as a doctor in 20 years of practice. We had the Circle family meeting. Many of you have gone through this. My mom announced that she bought a pine casket, the cheapest one that she could find, because she was going to heaven. But then the doctor said, you're too old to have radiation therapy. You can't have your breast removed. But there's an interesting study on turkey tail mushrooms at Bastyr Medical School. You might want to try taking those. And my mother goes, well, my son's supplying those. So she was put on Taxol and Herceptin, wonderful drugs. And then she started taking 8 turkey tail capsules a day, 4 in the morning and 4 in the evening. And that was in June of 2009. And today, my mother has no detectable tumors. And I'd like to bring my mother home.
That was Paul Stamets, TED-Med Talk from 2011. Next, we share Paul Stamets' talk on the future of psychedelics, mycology, and medicine from Next Med Health.
Well, greetings, folks. I'm Paul Stamets, but I'm not just one person. I'm a knowledge keeper in a long lineage that goes back thousands of generations. The fact that I have this voice on stage, I'm representing a huge community of indigenous people all over the world that have preserved, studied, and shared these sacred medicines of psilocybin mushrooms in particular. So I want to bring to you today some of the cutting-edge research that is rooted in indigenous knowledge, and there's a convergence now of indigenous wisdom and science. What's so extraordinary is that the scientific methods and the studies now are validating much which has been practiced over thousands of years. I want to give you my disclosures. I do own a company at fungi.com, Fungi Perfecti. I've co-founded Mycomedica Life Sciences, a new startup company that's focusing on psilocybin for therapeutic use. We have a new nonprofit, the Center for Ecological Consciousness. This is where the bulk of my wealth and my assets will go, hopefully, for generations to come. I've written many books, and I don't know how to separate my avocation from my vocation. All of you who study a subject, you are biased towards the subject you're studying because you are interested in it. It's a tautology, so. But anyhow, that being the case, how many species of psilocybin mushrooms have yet been discovered so far? 140, actually 141. And they're all over the world. And every continent, except for Antarctica, not discovered yet. The fact there's over 5,682 collections since the 1800s. This gives you an idea that the presence of these psilocybin mushrooms in the ecosystem. Now, why has this taken so long? Think about it. In your viewscape with plants and animals, you have them on your near event horizon daily, weekly, monthly, repeatedly, over and over again. We know what plants are edible, which animals are edible, which mushrooms are edible from the experiences of those people who've eaten them before us. But mushrooms are different. Mushrooms come up and they disappear in 4 or 5 days. What was that? You may not see them for a year, 2 years, 3 years. So that sort of memory you have is so ephemeral. And so something that can feed you, that can kill you, that can heal you, that can send you on a spiritual journey, something that is so potent but so temporary, it's no wonder that it's taken so long for the significance of these unusual organisms to come forward. We do have echoes from the past in the archaeological record. Mesoamerican mushroom stones, the Tisili cave art from 7,000 years ago in northern Algeria, the myth of Demeter giving Persephone a mushroom before she goes into the underworld. Sophocles, Aristotle, Plato all partook of the Eleusinian mysteries. Interestingly, the Mesoamerican mushroom stones in the Eleusinian mysteries were coinciding almost at the same time, persisting for more than 1,000 years. We must give tribute to Maria Sabina, who through her graciousness and kindness invited R. Gordon Wasson and Valentina Wasson and her group, their group, to come and to embark on a guided psilocybin mushroom journey. And she used psilocybe zapotecorum and psilocybe cerulescens and psilocybe mexicana, 3 species that are in that region of Mexico. What's extraordinary is that Maria Sabina was not only a shaman, she was a mycologist. She went out into the wilds, she would collect mushrooms, she knew which ones to pick safely, and she would use them. That's very different than someone just giving you some mushrooms. Now, Valentina Wasson does not get enough credit. She was a Russian physician, and she also was an ethnomycologist. She grew up in Russia. She knew mushrooms by their Latin names, the binomials. And these two women were powerful forces in bringing this knowledge forward. Richard Evans Schultes from Harvard, also 1938, 1939, first heard and collected some of these magic mushrooms. But from these early encounters with indigenous people, we were able to study these mushrooms, get them into herbaria, and the science then focused on their taxonomy and chemistry, and Albert Hofmann discovered psilocybin, the molecule that was present within these mushrooms. I need to give credit to my family. My brother John first turned me on to psychedelics when he brought back this book from Yale on break. I was 14 years of age. And I lent the book to my friend Ryan, and my best friend. He borrowed the book and had it for a week or two. And I tried to get it back from Ryan. He wouldn't give it back to me. I pressured him over and over to give it back because my brother was going back to Yale. And Ryan said, I can't give it back to you. My father found it and burned it. I said, he burned my brother's book? I was so ashamed. I was so apologetic to my older brother, who's my mentor. But I thought, if this book so inspired Ryan's father to burn it, then I think I have a subject matter I want to really explore.
You are listening to Eco-Justice Radio, a listener-supported media outlet. Please consider making a donation to ensure that we can continue to provide socially and environmentally driven content. Donations can be made at ecojusticeradio.org or socal350.org. For an extended version of this interview, as well as other benefits, we encourage you to become a member of our Patreon at patreon.com/ecojusticeradio. Today you're listening to Psychedelic Frontiers, Paul Stamets, and the Healing Power of Mushrooms. I'm your host, Jack Eit, and we feature multiple presentations given by visionary mycology researcher and author, Paul Stamets. Back to Paul Stamets and his talk on the future of psychedelics, mycology, and medicine from Next Med Health.
So I went on, and this is extraordinary, I think. 45 years ago, when I was 22 years of age, I published my first book on psilocybin mushrooms, psilocybe mushrooms and their allies, as a taxonomic treatise delimiting psilocybin mushrooms from their close lookalikes. I want to give tribute to my father, who was a great scientist, my mother, who was a charismatic Christian, but full of goodness and kindness, and my brother John, all of whom have passed away. And my mentors, Dr. Daniel Stuntz, Kit Skates, Alexander Smith, and Michael Bugh. I went on and discovered and co-authored 4 new species of psilocybin mushrooms: Psilocybe azurescens, the most potent psilocybin mushroom in the world, putatively; Psilocybe wiley, Psilocybe cynofibulosa, and Psilocybe leniformis variety americana. These were new to science. And out of the blue, I was blindsided by this. 2 weeks ago, I have a species now named after me. Psilocybe Stametsi. You know, it sounds good too, doesn't it? Stametsi. You can say it with authority. You know? It's probably the most well-documented psilocybin mushroom in the world, because 5 people, including 2 people from the Ecuadorian judiciary, were on the mushroom hunt, all with their iPhones and droids, and so they filmed this. It's a great honor in the field of mycology to have a species named after you. You never name a species after you in the field of mycology. In medicine, you can do that, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, etc., but not in the field of mycology. So this is the mushroom life cycle, just abbreviated. You can create cultures from spores or tissue. And I decided, since so many of you may have heard of psilocybin mushrooms, how many of you have actually gone on a mushroom hunt looking for psilocybin mushrooms? Very few, 4 hands. So I'm going to show you 3 psilocybin mushroom hunts in rapid succession here. This is Psilocybe azurescens, the most potent psilocybin mushroom in the world. It's very, very large. It has a sinuous stem, and it grows in mixed alder forests. It's actually, this type location is where the Columbia River flows into the Pacific Ocean. And from the huge storms of coming off the Pacific, the flooding of the Columbia River, the debris fields that are created, it's localized in about 10 to 15 miles south of the Columbia River and 10 to 15 miles north. It is a species that is extraordinarily large for what we call a ligniculus species, a species that grows in wood chips. So audio people, I hope you can get the next audios in queue, please.
Greetings, and meet Psilocybe azurescens.
Okay.
Psilocybe azurescens is probably one of the most potent mushrooms in the world. It contains psilocybin and psilocin up to 2% of its dried mass. Now think of that. 2% of the dried mass of this mushroom are psychoactive crystals. Why would a mushroom produce so much? We don't know, but it certainly attracted the interest of humans. The bluing that you see here is a bruising reaction. It's indicative of psilocin as it degrades. And the more bluing you see, the more psilocin there once was. Now, psilocybin dephosphorylates into psilocin, and when you ingest these mushrooms, psilocin becomes a serotonin agonist. It means that the psilocybin or the psilocin becomes a temporary neurotransmitter, opening up the floodgates of the senses. Now, this mushroom is sinuous. It's got a sinuous stem, which means it bends back and forth. It's bluing very, very strongly, and it has these very indicative spore color here on the annular zone. And the spore color is purple-brown, and the mushrooms are bluish. Those two features in combination pretty much de facto determines its psilocybe. Now look how bodacious the rhizomorphs are at the base of the stem. This is a large psilocybe, by far the largest one that I know that grows on wood chips in the Pacific Northwest. It is now a popular one to have in your backyard. It's just fun. It's just naturalized in the woods here. And this is a beautiful fruiting of them. And the psilocybes, many of the woodland psilocybes have this chestnut brown to caramel color. This one is unique in that it's got these umbos, and it's a broad umbo, and the cap is very circular. The bruising reactions just from impact of rain, perhaps. This mushroom is one of the most fascinating and interesting ones to grow. Those who choose to partake of this mushroom should be warned. These are exceptionally potent, and oftentimes they can cause temporary paralysis, loss of muscle control. So that is not a good thing. It seems that most people who boil this mushroom in hot water, those symptoms seem to be alleviated. But this is clearly a sacred species, and I love just personally touching it. This is not a mushroom that I enjoy eating. It's almost too potent for me. But it is a species that I greatly admire. I love touching it. I love handling it. I love seeing it. And it's a great indicator of the habitat in my magical mushroom forest that is very conducive to spiritual experiences.
Now, the other species that grows in the Northwest, and actually Psilocybe cyanescens, it's widely cultivated now in wood chips. It was first identified and published by Elsie Wakefield from the Kew Gardens in 1946. There is a very strong theory that Psilocybe cyanescens came from the Northwest and went to the Kew Gardens, colonizing Europe, because of the importation of all the plants into the Kew Gardens. And so when the plants came in with the soil and the wood chips and the mycelium, so this is an example of a species from North America, likely that had colonized Europe. So here is a Psilocybe cyanescens patch. Oops, we're not advancing for some reason, so we'll go ahead. There it goes. And this is it's called the wavy cap for obvious reasons. It grows in wood chips and sort of a mixed ecosystem. There's mosses and lichens, and it has this bluing reaction on the stem. Another species is Psilocybe stuntzii, named after Daniel Stuntz, University of Washington. It's got an annular zone on the stem, and it's bluish. Well, there's an unfortunate circumstance here, folks, which makes it very dangerous to collect these mushrooms for amateurs. This is Psilocybe stuntzii and Galerana marginata, the most poisonous mushroom in the world. Compared to Amanita verosa and Amanita phalloides, which has killed many people, the most people who have died from mushroom poisonings have died from Amanita phalloides. It contains the same cyclopeptides. They're growing so close together, they're touching. Think of that. Now, Psilocybe pelliculosa also grows in wood chips, and there's more Galerana marginata. So the ambitious young pickers or people who are picking these mushrooms can very easily pick them both together. Then there's Psilocybe semilanceata, the liberty cap. This grows in fields, especially around ponds. So we will zoom into
throughout the temperate regions of Europe and the Pacific Northwest, One of the most interesting psilocybes to collect is one that grows near ponds in the grass. And this field has not had cows on it for more than 10 years. So cows and sheep can help, but they're not necessary. And this is Psilocybes simulantiata, the famed Liberty cap. It's exquisite little fruiting here. It's got a translucent striate margin. You can see the striations, they're actually the gills showing through the cap. And the cap also has a separable gelatinous pellicle. So here is one over here that we can look at. And as you tear the cap, there is a film that's clearly visible. And you can say, whoa, that's a really big one. And that film stretches and then breaks. So these mushrooms have purple-brown spores, a separable gelatinous pellicle, and they typically have a sharp umbo or a nipple at the very, very top of the cap. And this papilla or nipple is not always in every specimen, but it's quite characteristic of the species in general.
And another species, and this is the most common one that's being consumed around the world, is Psilocybe cubensis. Likely genomically, it traces back to Africa. This species and Liberty caps look like they probably came over with cattle and pastoral, herbivores, sheep, horses, cows, etc., that were brought in from the old world to the new world. So you have colonization of species going back and forth. What is colonization? It's migration of species. All species migrate. All species colonize new habitats. But now they're everywhere. So they're all around the world. So the psilocybin mushrooms became very well known in the 1970s, when it was realized you did not have to go to Mexico, and you could find these psilocybin mushrooms literally in your backyard in the Northwest, Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. Dr. Andrew Weil published this in the Harvard Botanical Leaflets on the sudden popularity of psilocybin mushrooms in Oregon. Terence McKenna, who was a great thinker and philosopher, controversial friend that many of us know, he published a number of books, but by far the most interesting book that spurred interest was the Psilocybin Magic Mushroom Grower's Guide, which it showed people how to grow psilocybin mushrooms in their backyard, in their closets, in their basements, etc. We started a series of psilocybin mushroom conferences, and this is in Oregon. And because I had a DEA license coverage with Dr. Michael Bugh from the Evergreen State College, I was able to collect and hold these psilocybin mushrooms legally. So that was sort of our umbrella for doing these conferences where people were bringing in specimens, and this is what we need. We need specimens brought in so we could study them. So we did a series of these conferences for over 30 years. This conference is a continuation of that knowledge stream. And then the Psychoactivity Conference here in 1998, Albert Hofmann discovered LSD, the first one to isolate psilocybin. Sasha and Ann Shulgin, myself, and other psychonauts, came together. But I'm also a merry prankster. I knew Ken Kesey, the merry pranksters, and I realized that I had a Venn intersection of knowing the psychedelic scientists and the psychedelic rangers. So we put them together at the Millennium Mushroom Conference, an extraordinary conference. Some of you may have seen the Netflix series, How to Change Your Mind. There's a brief clip in there. Okay, so that's some of the cultural background. Let's migrate forward. So now, as Daniel mentioned, psilocybin mushrooms have become the zeitgeist of our time. There are actually 24 states now that have bills or ballots that have moved forward. Oregon and Colorado have decriminalized and allowed for therapeutic use. So this is because there is such compelling evidence that psilocybin mushrooms have great potential mental health benefits, and there's a familiarity factor that's increasing with them because so many of us know people who have had psilocybin mushroom experiences that have been profoundly beneficial. So let's look at 4 meta-studies. This is one of prisoners, 485,000 prisoners surveyed. Statistically significant reductions in past year larceny and theft, property crime, and violent crime. When you're looking at community members here, between the ages of 16 and 70, 1,266 members, psilocybin was associated with a reduction in partner-to-partner violence. Then, when you look at associations between classic psychedelics and opioid use in a representative adult population in the United States, only psilocybin was associated with a reduction in opioid use disorder. And another study recently that came out, only psilocybin was associated with an increase in nature relatedness. Now, many physicians are here. You know about best case outcomes. Well, these meta-surveys start populating the database that builds a credible argument for studying these clinically. So I show you these because today there is 120 clinical trials on psilocybin registered at clinicaltrials.gov. Think of that, 120. 11 of these are using niacin as an active placebo. Both of these substances, psilocybin and niacin, have an effect in about 20 minutes. I think this is misplaced. I don't think niacin is a good positive control. I think this cartoon sums it up quite clearly. Nothing more needs to be said. But a placebo should be a placebo throughout the entire clinical study. You should know the difference of it in 20 minutes, right? So it's extraordinary to me. This went through all the IRB boards, more than 200 physicians, and they all approved niacin as an active placebo. You gotta wonder, right? So in any event, there are clinical studies now that have been published. Many of you know about treatment-resistant depression, significant results, placebo, double-blind controlled, and a more recent one on alcohol use disorder. Also significant reduction in binge drinking. Okay, these are two of the clinical trials of the 120, and there's more that have been published. For the sake of time, I'm not gonna go through them. But there begins to be a chorus of data. The problem I see with psilocybin in medicine, it seems too good to be true. All of us are resistant to that, but you know, it just might be true. It might be true in reducing violence. You know, it might be true in reducing crime. The evidence is starting to accumulate here. This narrative is increasingly more credible. How many applications for psilocybin therapy are there for benefiting patients and society? Roland Griffiths from Johns Hopkins have proposed changing psilocybin, was put on Schedule 1 to Schedule 4. Schedule 1, as most of you know, is dangerous, no medical use, high potential for addiction. For those of you who have not taken psilocybin mushrooms, when you take a large dose of psilocybin mushrooms, the next day, when you look at the mushrooms, you say, no friggin' way. I'm not touching that for a long time. Indeed, some people only use it once in their lifetime, for 6 hours, one day. And the positive benefits extend throughout their entire life. What medicine does that? It's not a very good pharmaceutical model, you know, but there's macrodosing and microdosing. Macrodose is perceptual, microdosing is subperceptual. So 1 gram of psilocybe cubensis at 1% is 10 milligrams. A tenth of that, you know, is 1 milligram is typically subperceptual. So the interesting thing about microdosing is increasingly a trend. And there are studies now, and many clinical studies, trying to track the benefits of microdosing. So psilocybe cubensis is the most commonly used psilocybin mushroom in the world. Maria Savina did not use it. It was associated with the Spaniards that came over the New World, so it was frankly disdained. It was not a preferred species. But extraordinarily interesting, a friend of mine recently went to Oaxaca and visited the Mazatecs. Because of the surge in interest in psilocybe mushrooms, and because they cannot find it during the off-season, what are they using? They're using psilocybe cubensis that's being generated with Western technologies of in vitro propagation to make it sustainable for the Mazatecs to be able to continue their tradition. Psilocybin mushrooms builds bridges across cultures, across continents, across the centuries. Dr. Pam Crisco, who's in the audience here, she's a co-founder of Mycomedical Life Sciences. We were involved in setting up this microdose study with Quantified Citizen at microdose.com, downloadable for the Droid and iOS devices. So in this, it's anonymized, it went through ethics review. You have your own data. And it has challenge tests, how much you're taking, what are you stacking it with? I popularized a stack with lion's mane and niacin. You know, came up with this in the mid 2015 or so. There's a memory test, there's hearing tests, there's cognitive skills tests. So we went forward, and I encourage all of you to, please participate in this. We have over 22,000 people reporting in this app. Think of that data set. We have literally millions and millions of data points now. We can't disambiguate them. It's just the data is just too much. So we have published now 3 papers in Nature. The first paper was a paper based on motivation and demographics. The second paper was more on looking at consequences, putatively the effects, with all the caveats that are involved. And the second paper began to show us some signals. And this was a smaller subset of the 22,000 people. But the peer reviewers at Nature were most impressed by the fact that data sets were so large. So we got significant decreases in depression and anxiety, improvement of moods, using psilocybin mushrooms, microdosing, as I explained, also with a stack with niacin, lion's mane, and psilocybin. So I came up with a Stamets stack, and this is just a general recipe. You're welcome to take a photograph of it right now. I'll leave it up for about 10 seconds. And I chose niacin because psilocybin is a vasoconstrictor. Niacin is a vasodilator. Neuropathies oftentimes present themselves as a deadening of the fingertips and the toes as the vascular system, declines. And so I thought for the neurogenic benefits of psilocybin, vasodilation would help neuropathy and the endpoints of the peripheral nervous system. I chose lion's mane because lion's mane is actually one of the best studied medicinal mushrooms in the world. I populate for physicians and researchers a website at mushroomreferences.com, literally hundreds of pages long, with a great search engine. You can search all the clinical studies that are out there, all the in vitro studies. It's a really great resource for those physicians and researchers who don't have time. With all the chaos of data, you can zoom directly in to the most relevant studies. Lion's mane stimulates NGF and also rebuilds myelin on the axons of the nerves that helps signal transmission. There's 4 double-blind placebo-controlled studies, some of them are mentioned here, Alzheimer's and dementia, being 2 of the more significant ones. And so that's the reason why I stack these together.
You are listening to Eco-Justice Radio, a listener-supported media outlet. Please consider making a donation to ensure that we can continue to provide socially and environmentally driven content. Donations can be made at ecojusticeradio.org or socal350.org. For an extended version of this interview, as well as other benefits, we encourage you to become a member of our Patreon at patreon.com/ecojusticeradio. Today you're listening to Psychedelic Frontiers, Paul Stamets, and the Healing Power of Mushrooms. I'm your host, Jack Eit, and we feature multiple presentations given by visionary mycology researcher and author, Paul Stamets. Back to Paul Stamets and his talk on the future of psychedelics, mycology, and medicine from Next Med Health.
So, in talking to Dr. Pam Crisco, because some of our results were all based on subjective reports. How do you feel? Well, I'm not a psychiatrist, and this is very complicated to me. But I asked, don't we have a motor skill test? And she said, yes, we do. We have a psychomotor test. So we put this in, called the finger tapping test. Many of you physicians know this. Traumatic brain injury, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS. How many times you can tap your fingers in 10 seconds? When you're 22, you can tap a lot better when you're 82. I think we all know that. So we started looking at the finger tapping test. And when we got the results came in to our other co-authors, they said, we have some results, we're not going to share it with you. I go, why? He says, well, we can't believe it. And I said, well, I'm really, of course, what do you see? He said, we see something with a finger tapping test that's truly different, it's surprising, unusual. And this is the results. With the Stamets stack, niacin, lion's mane, and psilocybin mushrooms at microdosing levels, the tapping frequency went from 48 to 68 taps in 30 days in the 55-plus-year-old population. Now, that's interesting because, obviously neurodegeneration is age-related. We all suffer from neurodegeneration in age. So this unambiguously cannot be explained as a subjective result of interpretation. This is a psychomotor skill test. And so the p-value of significance is 1 in 250 chance that it's just random. So the p-value of significance obviously here is quite extraordinary. Now think about variability in the underground psilocybin mushrooms that are being collected, variability in niacin, variability in lion's mane. All those supply chains in a chain of custody are many of them with variabilities. The fact that we had such significance in the TAP test, 0.004, logically, if those parameters were more narrowed and optimized, we'd have a better significance than you're seeing here. I think I discovered something. So I tasked the 11 scientists who work for our company, what could be the mechanisms of action? Fortunately, they're much smarter than me. And they zeroed into a urofin test, looking at MAP kinases, TRK, B, and C, and JAK1s. And these code for nerve growth factors and BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factors. This is what stem cells can differentiate into newborn neurons in the brain, in the hippocampus. So we started sending samples to urofins, several thousand samples now, several thousand combinations. I'm going to show you 4 results. The synergy of psilocin and niacin for TRK, by itself, the cumulative additive sum you see there, you put it together, we have a synergy of 4.8, 6.4 times stronger in helping and stimulating NGF to bind to the receptors that go through the cell wall to the nucleus and then increases cell division. So when we put all 3 of them together, we saw something truly surprising. Maximum calculable value. Where the individuals at this microdosing level have no activity, but 3 of them together with no activity combined has massive activity. This is the gunpowder analogy. Charcoal, sulfur, potassium nitrate. 3 individual components have no activity, you put it together, it's explosive. So then track B, of course, is the most interesting one. I found this article in Cell, came out a year and a half ago, 28 co-authors from renowned medical institutions found that short and long-acting antidepressants work because of stimulating track B. And here again, we have maximum calculable value. Niacin, I think, is a catalyst for these psychedelics. Not only for its vasodilation, this is the in vitro. This is no vasodilation involved. So again, this may be understated. Then we looked at lion's mane, nicotinic acid, and norpsilocin, which is an analog that's legal with psilocybin as a derivative of baeocystin, another analog that's legal. And we had massive stimulation of interleukin 10s, and this also codes for your endogenous antiviral, defense, in your immune system. So the bottom line hypothesis is that niacin is a catalyst for reducing neurogenic factors with psilocybin-related tryptamines. Niacin vasodilation, then we believe clinically, will show benefit. And the entourage effect of the synergy. Now, I have more than 200 of maximum calculable value test results. So this is just not a binary between psilocin and niacin, or norpsilocin, lion's mane, and niacin, or baeocystin. They're all cross-talking across the ecosystem of the nervous system. Think of that. The entourage effect and the synergy of all these compounds that are in the psilocybin mushrooms, and yet 95% of all the clinical studies are in psilocybin the molecule and not psilocybin the mushroom. 99% of all people taking psilocybin are taking in psilocybin mushrooms form. It's not 99%. It's 99.9999999, right? People don't have access to psilocybin the molecule, but the clinicians want to have this magic bullet approach. Let's go down to a unitary, singularity, one compound. Let's test it. Let's see the result. We didn't evolve that way, folks. We evolved with foods. Our receptors are in constant biomolecular communication with the ecosystem that surrounds us and the foods that we ingest. We need to have clinical trials. All this is preliminary evidence. The TAP test is so beguiling and so interesting. It's hard to argue that away. It is a psychomotor benefit. But the in vitro tests that we have, as suggestive as they are, we must prove this clinically. But it takes sometimes a person like me, who's embedded deeply into the subject, but not a neuroscientist, to think out of the box, to come out of left field. I believe psilocybin reduces opioid use. I believe, and others do too, psilocybin reduces alcohol binging. Psilocybin reduces depression and anxiety. I believe psilocybin reduces crime. My family's been affected by opioid use. It's difficult, really, really difficult. It's hard to talk to your friends and your neighbors. They know. Word gets out. You don't want to talk about bad news. But think about the opposite with psilocybin. You meet somebody who is adversely affected from PTSD or trauma, alcoholism, opioid. They have 1 6-hour experience with psilocybin, and they're changed. Good news travels far. Like a pebble in the pond, there are ripples that emanate out through society. Look at the return on investment in reducing the budgets that are spent for law enforcement. And indeed, surprising to many of you here, but my good friend Randy is here, Dr. Pam Crisco, Lee Stein in the audience. There is a massive movement in law enforcement and with the SEALs group. There's a church in Texas called the Healthy Warrior Church. 400 SEALs have gone through. Another church in Texas by my friend Marcus, who's an ex-SEAL, working with Governor Perry and getting bills moved forward. 600 SEALs in that group coming together for a weekend experience within the protection of a religious institution or church that's using psilocybin. They come out of that with a result that no other medicine and practice has even come close to. Psilocybin does a lot. I think psilocybin is a game changer. As excited as I am about this, I want to buffer my enthusiasm. My skeptics, as Daniel Kraft and other people in our community know, have become my best supporters because they want to see the evidence. There is a compounding amount of evidence here that psilocybin is a game changer. Psilocybin, I believe, makes nicer people. That bridges divides across religion and politics. That brings people together in a unanimity of being and a oneness with common purpose. That we're kinder, we're more considerate, we're more tolerant, less prone to react negatively. We don't throw spears at each other. We want to build camaraderie and community. And we've heard from so many people and physicians and researchers here, building community is a significant influence on outcomes of all medicines that are currently in practice. Most people who are using psilocybin mushrooms are using it, or not most, but a good number of them are using it in chocolate. Thanks to the Aztecs, you make little chocolates, you put your microdoses in it, you store it in a jar. Word of caution, put the word laxative on the chocolate. You don't want to have any accidents. Keep it away from children, of course, all those caveats. These are powerful medicines. My father, before he died, asked me to take psilocybin with him. Alexander Smith, who published numerous new species of psilocybin mushrooms, the father of American mycology, and Helen, his wife, who also published voluminously in the scientific literature. Alexander Smith and my father both asked me to do a journey with them on psilocybin mushrooms because they trusted me. I asked them both the same question. Will your partners, will your wife take psilocybin with you? And both Helen and Mona said no. I declined. I said, I am not going to take psilocybin with you towards the end of your life where you have this epiphany and not being able to communicate what happened. As Johns Hopkins researchers reported and many other, it's the ineffable. It's the impossible to explain the experience. So there's all this technology in VR, which I think is wonderful, and there could be a convergence of VR and psychedelics, especially, at a short period of experience. But nobody on psychedelics wants to have a VR set on for 6 or 8 hours, right? It's just too much stimulation. But there is a role here for artificial and natural intelligence to converge. So we are at a nexus point in the evolution of our species. We need to have a paradigm shift in consciousness. We are at a point in the evolution of the human species that we have some decisions to make. I, as a knowledge keeper and a long lineage of elders going back thousands of years, and so many of these knowledge keepers, the threads of knowledge have been cut by domination, by religious persecution, by war, by natural disasters, subjugation, one religion, over indigenous religions. The fact that we have this knowledge today, we have echoes from the past in archaeology, and in the songs, oral traditions, art, as tenuous as they are, so many of those threads of knowledge have been clipped and broken. But because we have media now in a different form, not just songs and music and art, but we have internet, we have the ability of being able to electronically share knowledge, we have conferences like this of thought leaders coming together. We have a unique opportunity here, folks, an extraordinary opportunity. And we must prove this clinically, but we can. We have challenges that will face us into the future. But I think that this is fundamental for improving the nervous system of us all, the central peripheral and autonomous nervous system. This is a game changer because microdosing can become a nootropic vitamin that we can all benefit as we age. I want to thank my fellow employees and researchers. As a dedicated team, we're inspired. We think that we are making history. We're onto something truly extraordinary. And innovation and breakthroughs does not come from conventional wisdom. Think of this. It's the minority that always pushes the envelope. Conservatives have their role in society. They're protecting that which has given stability. And those who push the envelope are disruptors. But I suggest to you, it's the minorities that always push innovation and change, push the envelope, are on the frontiers of knowledge, sacrificing themselves because of the expense and the probability that they'll fail, but they're able to bring this forward. We need to protect our minorities. The biodiversity of our ethnicities and our cultural backgrounds is absolutely critical for us to push the frontiers of medicine and science into the future. How many Einsteins have we lost? How many Einsteins are in this room? For those of you, as you age, with all that experience, if you have that knowledge intact to be able to pass it down and hand it off to the next generation, I think you can smile, as I hope to, on my deathbed, knowing that I did everything I could. I handed this knowledge as one person in a long lineage of knowledge keepers to be able to help future generations. Our ancestors are calling back from the past. Our descendants are calling back from the future. This is our time. We need a legal system. We need the guardrails. Psilocybin is not for everyone. 70% of the people on average have a great experience. 30% of the people do not. We need to have quality controls. We need government regulations. A few weeks ago, I received my Drug Enforcement Administration license, so I'm now able to legally research psilocybin. Because I think also one of the reasons, not only do I have a long history, but I came up with a mantra a long time ago. Nature provides, I don't. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychotherapist. Those of you who are, what a complex ecosystem you have to deal with. I'm not skilled in that. I'm a mycologist. I'm an inventor. I like to think outside of the box and push the envelope. I may not always be right. I don't have to be. I don't have to worry about tenure. I own my own company. But it gives me the liberty of exploration and imagination. Let's all imagine the future. We're at our time. We are at a time critical. I think that we are at a time now that we have to invent solutions that will help our species and descendants survive. Failing that, our species will also fail. But I have hope. Psilocybin is a game changer. All of you who are involved in the psilocybin movement, help protect it, help have discipline, help have other people have discipline. When you see them going astray and off the guardrails, don't marginalize them, don't humiliate them. Reach out a hand in kindness, bring them back into the fold, and saying these are sacred, powerful medicines that need to be shepherded with kindness, courage, and wisdom. I want to thank you very much.
That was Paul Stamets giving a talk titled The Future of Psychedelics, Mycology and Medicine from Next Med Health. Thank you to Paul Stamets, TED Med, and Next Gen Health. Thank you to Janet Sager-Knott, for inspiring this show and taking me to see Paul Stamets speak at UCLA. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. This has been Psychedelic Frontiers, Paul Stamets and the Healing Power of Mushrooms. For an extended version of this show, become a member of our Patreon or visit our website at ecojusticeradio.org. Please connect with us on social media at EcoJustice Radio, SoCal350, and Wilder Utopia. If you like what you've heard and you want others to be informed, subscribe and share the episodes and help us continue our efforts by joining our Patreon or making a tax-deductible donation to the show at ecojusticeradio.org or SoCal350.org. Project of SoCal 350. The show can be found on all major podcast apps and at ecojusticeradio.org. Executive producer, myself, Jack Ide, co-host Carrie Kim, and engineer and original music by Blake Quake Beats. And until next time, remember, the power is yours.